Okay, they did something crazy here, something brilliant. Okay, this scene, the way season 1 ended, was not a cliffhanger, and that may sound ridiculous. I think everyone saw that ending, me included, and was like, "What? It's really gonna end like that?" This is a scene which I think clearly is designed to give off the impression of being a cliffhanger until you think into it a bit, and then you realize kind of what the whole show is about and how precise the storytelling is. And just to be clear, I'm not saying you're missing facts. I'm not saying, oh, look, red arrow, 10 things you missed in the ending. I'm talking about the whole arc of the show here, okay? But let's define our terms here. So a cliffhanger is where you end before the ending. Or more specifically, instead of ending on the resolution of an arc, it's ending right before we find out what that resolution is. Or even more specifically, it's when you replace the rush of emotions that comes from the climax of an arc with the rush of emotions that comes from wanting to find out what the climax is. And the nature of those two rushes of emotions are like total opposites. You have catharsis versus like kind of agony, right? But it's actually I think it's even more devious than that. It's almost like we check our emotional content meters like once the credits are rolling. We're like, that's weird. Like it's reading full. And like I mean, I guess I did feel something big at the end, but it's like it's like Leprechaun Gold in Harry Potter. It's your emotional content meter is full of emotion that's about to just rot away and vanish until by the time you leave the stadium, you're just another poor Weasley, right? So okay, so isn't that exactly what's going on here? Ending right before we find out what happens. Like just practically, the action we're watching in the last seconds doesn't have resolution. It doesn't finish. We see the glass crack. Something is going on with Mel, and then credits, and that's it. And, see you in 2023 or whatever. So here's where there's kind of some wiggle room on this. So ending right before the ending, right? That's our definition. But what does that mean? If it's ending, then isn't that the ending, right? So what we really mean is ending before the story is supposed to end. There's a clear place where it's supposed to end, where it's all been building up to, kind of the answer to the big question the story has been asking, and then everything stops right before we get that answer. Okay, so I'm going to ask you to do what sounds like a thought experiment here, but it's real. It's going to shed some serious light, I think, on this delicate balance that the Arcane writers maintain here for a reason that I think is just, like, brilliant, okay? So here's the experiment. Let's say the show ends after the missile hits. If that's the ending, what does that mean the story is building up to? And then the real ending, same question. If it ends like this, then what does that mean the story is building up to? In either case, what's the resolution to the show's overarching arc, okay? So if you think about it that way, we have two very different and very interesting answers. The resolution to the show's overarching arc is Piltover is destroyed, or the resolution to the show's overarching arc is Jinx firing the Hextech weapon. Either the story is building up to the effect of Jinx's action, or the story is building up to just Jinx's action by itself. But what would that mean? Okay, I want to compare this to something, bear with me here. So when I saw this scene, it reminded me of something. It reminded me of another scene from a totally different story. Not a cliffhanger ending, but it carried this similar experience with it. So this was kind of the first scene I ever saw that made me feel the same emotion as when I saw Arcane. It was the end of Return of the Jedi, Luke helping Vader escape, and then Vader dies. I saw the scene as a kid, and I wanted the ending to be different than it was. I wanted Vader to survive. I wanted to see him escape with Luke, be a dad to him, live happily ever after, but that's not how the movie went, right? So let's ask the same question here. Star Wars is building up to something here. What is it building up to? So what's the theme of Star Wars? And obviously this is a much longer video, obviously also lots of possible answers. I spent literally years of my life trying to figure this out. This is what I came up with personally. So the theme of Star Wars, I think, is cosmic events are shaped by the day-to-day moral decisions of individuals. As in, we tend to assume it doesn't matter when on a given day we decide to react with anger or jealousy or fear. But the philosophy of the Jedi and the Sith is that tiny moral alignments in individuals are the most significant element in balancing global, cosmic, universal forces that determine history. Palpatine doesn't care about this big war going outside his window. He's completely prioritized trying to turn this one person, just trying to get him to feel like a little bit of anger. That's what I think the theme is. Take it or leave it, not important, for another video. But this is why Vader had to die, because Star Wars isn't about reuniting families. It's about light side, dark side. It's about individual moral decisions and individual moral alignment. If Vader lived, the emphasis on the moral decision alone would have been lost. We would have been so happy about the family reunion, we would have missed the significance of what happened just before that. We wouldn't have been able to be in the position to stop and realize the climax of this arc was the turning. It was him turning to light side. Saving Vader wasn't saving his life. It's this. It was like he says,
I'll not leave you here. I've got to save you.
You already have.
That element had to be distilled. We had to end there, or we lose the whole arc of Star Wars. Back to Arcane. What is the story about? Arcane isn't about cities thriving or cities being destroyed. It's about the City of Progress. It's about two characters who discover technology that has the potential to change the world for the better. And they're so ambitious about making the world a better place that they overlook the very real possibility that the same technology could make the world a much, much worse place, right? At the same time, Arcane is about two sisters whose relationship changes, and neither of them want it to change. Neither of them want themselves to have changed since they were together. And then once they're reunited, they both are trying desperately to undo the change, but it can't be undone. This story doesn't end when Piltover is destroyed. It ends when Hextech is weaponized. It ends the moment Piltover can no longer be called the City of Progress because its scientific ambitions have produced the technology of self-destruction. It doesn't end when Jinx completes her act of terrorism. It ends when Jinx cements her identity as Jinx through this irreversible act of terrorism. It ends with a decision. When she stops trying to be Powder, destroys any hope we still have, that Powder is ever coming back. This one moment is where the show needs to end to maintain the emphasis on the real resolution to its arcs. A second later, we would have been thinking about the harm Jinx caused, the physical destruction, that Piltover is suffering, not these themes that we've been focused on for the entire story. This whole show is about accepting change and the irreversibility of change, but throughout the show until now, all the change that's been portrayed has been kind of not quite set. It's not permanent. It's undoable for now. We can avoid war with Zaun if we negotiate. We can prevent Hextech from becoming weaponized if we close the Hex gates and block off the bridge. Powder isn't totally lost. We can still get her back.
Make her go away, please. Send her on her way in, and you can have Powder back.
One notable exception ends up being a prelude to all this, which is Victor. So Victor is dying, right? But maybe it's undoable. Maybe Hextech can become insecure, and then he accidentally kills Skye, which acts as a premonition for the climax. This is the first time we've seen irreversible change. This side plot is the show telling us maybe we're wrong about change. Maybe there's a point where you really can't go back. Jayce using Hextech as a personal weapon and that kid dying is also similar. Everything hasn't yet gotten to the point where everything has changed too far for it to go back. But, at the same time, then the characters start to realize. Up until now, we haven't lost anything at all that we care about. Sorry, Marcus. And then episode 8 through the end of episode 9, the characters are all acting on that fear. This is how scary it is when you get to that point, and we cannot let ourselves get to that point. And, of course, this is exactly where the show brings us.
We lost ourselves.
So that's what I mean by not a cliffhanger. The story does not end early. It ends precisely where it means to. It doesn't end without us knowing what happens. We know exactly what happened. Jayce failed. Vi failed. Powder failed, right? All those arcs terminated the moment Jinx fired her gun. And Mel... So, yeah, Mel is legitimately a cliffhanger. Okay, but... Or, I think you could explain this one too. Bear with me here. So, how is Piltover's function described?
Piltover was founded to escape the warmongering of mages.
Mel is using magic here. Can we safely say that? So, Piltover was supposed to be a refuge from a world dominated by the whims of magic users. Hextech is also magic, but it slipped under the table kind of because it's science, right? But now we have weaponized Hextech. And then in response to that, we have an actual magic user using magic. Magic has found its way into Piltover. The city has lost that function of being a refuge. Once again, whatever Mel is doing with her magic here doesn't matter. Once she uses magic, that's it. That's the end for the City of Scientific Progress. If we got to see what she was doing with her magic, then forget it. We'd focus on that instead. It would break the emphasis on the mere act of her using magic, which is what's important here. And incidentally, I think that's almost definitely going to be what the theme of the next season is. It's going to be the show expanding its scope beyond Piltover. We're going to see a world where mages are running wild, warmongering, and then with Hextech, and for sure with Mel's decision, Piltover has now joined that world.
Perhaps it's time for the era of magic.
So that's my theory. It really made me appreciate the ending, and it made me reflect too. I think, obviously, they're drawing on a lot of parallels here. What was the moment that changed it all in our own world? You can visit Hiroshima today, and it's rebuilt. You wouldn't even know it had been vaporized 75 years ago. The building right underneath the blast of that hospital, that it was rebuilt brick for brick by the son of the hospital director during the war. It looks identical now. But we can never undo that moment when a decision was made to use that technology. And obviously, we can't undo the hundreds of thousands of deaths, either, or all the suffering. But some people can, and they have picked up and continued with their lives. But as a species, that moment of decision was something we can't just move on from. It dominated, almost the next 50 years, for sure, and continues to change everything and, kind of loom over us. So Arcane was bringing out a real idea here. Too real. So, somber note to end on, but, yay, Arcane, amazing show, right? Would love if you subscribed. Once again, if you like the art, follow the artist, my friend Kiara on Instagram. She and I made a comic together, Minor Champion. You can check that out if you want to read a fun superhero parody about a guy who's super, super serious about solving really, really small problems. It's free on Webtoons. The link is in the description. I have a Patreon if you want to support me there. And I think I'm going to try doing a short bonus video during the week. So from now on, tentatively, new videos every Wednesday and every Sunday. Okay? Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.